Today's podcast is with Isobel Phoebus. Isobel has such a broad depth of experience we could have done a standalone podcast on any of the topics that we covered. She's a wildlife ecologist, an expedition science instructor, as well as being an advocate for young women looking to pursue careers within the outdoors. Now, for those of you who already subscribed to the show, a massive thank you. And to those of you who are new here and want to support the podcast, the best way to do so is by subscribing. Now on to the episode. Fishy, you sat down with me. I must have looked mortified the last time you and I caught up, because when I came out, my girlfriend picked me up. She was like, "How did it go? What's wrong?" And I was like, "I just asked a wildlife ecologist if she knew what a badger was." And it's just like the moment after, it's like, oh my God.
Lingering effect.
That was the lingering. Since I have last seen you, that has been on my mind.
No way.
I mean, I'm kind of joking, but it was actually like...
It came back to you.
It did, yeah. And when I was chatting with Sarah, so you're a wildlife ecologist or wildlife biologist?
I call myself an ecologist.
Right, okay, cool.
Because it's more like I don't do straight biology. I don't necessarily just do straight biology, like the reproductive cycle. And it's more, the ecologist part is more also focusing on habitat stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I do mostly ecology.
Okay.
Rather than biology.
How did you get into wildlife ecology?
I did a master's in wildlife ecology and management in Germany. And worked with grizzly bears and their habitat. And then I just kind of kept on linking to projects that were similar in some ways. But that was, I started, when I did my undergrad, it was just land surface processes and environmental change. It was like an environmental science program. And then when I was in that program, I was looking like, what's the big problem that I want to solve? Like, what's the issue that's calling to me? And I never found one out of the 3 years of my undergrad. And then when I was thinking about my master's, I was just thinking about working outside and what do I like in nature. And so I thought about nature conservation, and then eventually found out about this wildlife ecology program. And so there was various factors of why I did that. We talked a little bit about it, like going to Europe. So I was thinking about how I could be in Europe and where else I would be with the program and what else I would do, because there was an internship and a short thesis and some courses and stuff. So it all kind of played into that.
And what made you choose the wildlife ecology course at university?
For the master's program, you mean? Or?
Like, how did you choose, before university, why did you choose to do the wildlife ecology? As opposed to
I'm not sure because my bachelor's was in environmental science.
Yeah.
So it wasn't wildlife ecology. Like, I didn't do much. Mm-hmm. The wildlife ecology part was, it's a long story, but I got the scholarship to study in Germany. Mm-hmm. So I had to pick I had to go to the goal was to go to German university. And then, when I was looking at international programs, I saw this international program for nature conservation, and that was intriguing to me because it was 1 semester in Germany, 1 semester in New Zealand, 1 semester in internship, 1 semester a thesis. And I was like, that sounds rad. But then when I thought about it more, I was like, I'm going to Europe. Do I really want to go to New Zealand this time when I'm already doing a European thing, or should I stay in Europe and take advantage of being there? So I was looking at going to Freiburg also, because that's where my grandparents were from and where my dad lived for a while. And then at the Freiburg University, they had this wildlife ecology program. And I had not found the passion of an environmental problem. So instead of focusing on what problem I was going to fix, I just focused on what I really was fascinated by and intrigued by. And I grew up in the woods in the middle of nowhere, boonies in the West Kootenays. And then I spent a lot of time outside growing up at my school. I went to a different school, like a private school, alternative school, I guess. And I've always been fascinated by animals and everything that I see, even a squirrel in the streets. I'll watch it and I'll be trying to figure out what it's doing. What's the behavior? And, so that program and the courses felt like the right fit rather than fixing a problem, just going with what I was really passionate about, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And have you feel like you found that problem now that you're working on, or are you still looking for it?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is helping species at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that through the grizzly bear work. They're a threatened species in Alberta. And then since then, I've worked with a number of different species that are at risk on projects since, almost 10 years now.
Wow.
10 years if you count my thesis. Since 2015. And it's 2026, so yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's funny how when you get to like our age, when people say 10 years, I still think it's quite funny because I would look at you and be like, how can she have done anything for 10 years and you're not that old? And then you're like, oh yeah, actually, like early 30s or mid 30s. You're like,
we've gotten there already somehow.
And then Sarah was, when I was chatting to Sarah about, I was saying, if there's any questions I should ask Isobel, and she was saying that I should ask you about a time that you slept in a crevasse. Is there a story to that?
Right. That's on the Mount Logan trip.
Right. Okay,
so I think I can't remember now what we talked about when we were at the coffee shop, but on Mount Logan, we were at 4,800 meters out of 959, so a decent ways up the mountain, and the weather turned, and we had just snow and crazy wind for a week. And there was a crevasse palace, the ice palace, that was shared. The location was shared by friends of mine who were already on Logan. Like when we flew into their base camp, and they took our plane to go to the south side to do a project. And so we were going up while they're like, you could still see their base camp for a little while. Eventually they left and we were there, but they had gone up this was 2021. So it was also COVID. There was not a lot of people there. But they shared the location of two crevasses. One was like a vertical crevasse that you just kind of like walk into on a steep kind of slope, and they had a little camp there. But the second one at 4,800 meters was like, it's like a slot hole that you walk down into, and like there's snow blowing in through that crack. So it's like a snowy slope for like 20 meters. And then you go, and it's this huge, like 100-meter wide crevasse. You're underneath the ice, and you see like big ice here and all these crystal formations coming down, and then a drop off into like black zone. So we stayed in there for a week, and you had like your tent there, and the bathroom was over here, and
wow,
we slept inside.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, when she said that to me, I was like, she seemed quite jovial about it. So I was like, obviously it's not like an accident story.
Right. I didn't fall in and get stuck there for a week.
And was that part of your, was that like a work thing, or was that just like recreational?
Recreational.
Oh, that's cool. So you've obviously done like, so you were talking about how like your kind of main passion with regards to university was or what you do now is to help extinct species. Like it's very cool how you...
Endangered or threatened, not extinct.
Right.
I mean, ideally.
Apologies.
No, all good.
But it's quite cool how you've blurred like I would assume that even that recreational stuff, like going into the crevasse, like in some capacity, that must also factor into your work like a little bit. Like even just like, I assume you being into that industry, like being out there, you must be like looking around.
Yeah. I mean, my observation skills are definitely heightened from work. Like I've done a lot of field work for environment species, not only species at risk, but just like plant identification and other habitat data collection out in the field. I've had since 2013, I've been doing field work every year pretty much. And it's a lot of observation and noticing what's happening and putting together clues. And also like being outside in all the conditions and like having all the gear that you need potentially to survive. Because I did a lot of remote field work also, where you might like get helicoptered out and then they're bumping you to a different place every day and you're collecting data. So a lot of those skills transferred into the big mountain recreation and expedition stuff as well, because I was already used to camping for weeks or, bushwhacking through where there's no trail because you're collecting data in the boreal forest or whatever it is. And then also now vice versa, I think, now that I've increased my mountain skills in terms of like glacier travel and climbing and that sort of thing, I'm bringing some of that into my field work too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked like in the Arctic. I think maybe we mentioned this on this Arctic seabird project. And I had a role that was both working there as a biologist and helping out with the science, but also as like a ropes technician, safety, like rescue personnel. So I was teaching people how to use the hand line, setting up the rappels. So it's like a cool mix. And the Girls on Ice program is also a mix. And then also adding in like mentorship and inspiring.
Wow, that's
people.
amazing.
So.
And then with regards to that crevasse story, so like I'm trying to like picture it in my mind, like can you give me a scale on the size of like how big it is? Like are we talking like a football field or like a...
Oh yeah, okay.
Like, because I'm thinking if you're in it for a week, like it can't be...
It was huge.
A small ledge that you're all living on.
No. It was like, so I said like 80 to 100 meters wide, potentially, like 20 meters tall, maybe, before it like opens up into the big black hole. And
the black hole, like you don't know what that's just
I did not look.
Did you look at all? No.
Well, I mean, I didn't go to the edge. Like it's just like snow and then it drops off. Like it like rolled down off into nothing.
And do you set up like any barriers so that no one like accidentally... steps?
Hopefully you're not sleepwalking. I mean, it was a big, like when you get down, let's say you got down here, this is like down 20 meters. This is maybe like another 15 meters before the drop off or something.
15 or 50?
15.
Wow. Doesn't seem that much.
It's not that much.
Yeah.
Maybe 20.
Okay.
But it wasn't like...
I'm scared I'm not even there.
You like sneak into this passage where it did go down to like 10 meters. Like where we camped was this weird like hole. There was an ice wall here. It was a hole that you went into. We had our tent. And then the whole drop off went like behind here. And then also like over here, there was a drop off. So we had a tent on like some sort of little outcrop of sorts.
And how deep is the crevasse?
Do you know? The whole
thing?
I have no idea. It could have, so, I mean, this is in the north, in the Yukon, on the highest mountain that we have in Canada. The glaciers are very large compared to what we see down here, and the crevasses are way bigger. So I would imagine it would go down 100 meters at least, if not more.
Right,
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know how. Yeah, maybe like 60 to 100 meters or something. But I don't know.
So you were there for a week. So why were you there for a week? Were you...
Storm. We were stormed.
Oh, you
stuck
were
in the storm.
stormed in for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay, cool. So you're on a Mount Logan expedition and you get stormed in a crevasse for a week.
So we were climbing up the east ridge of Mount Logan and then skiing down. We were 2 people, and the whole tactic was because we were doing a traverse, we didn't do any pre-drops or anything. We had everything with us, and we would have to do a hauling trip and then go back down and then take the rest of our stuff. So essentially we were kind of zigzagging up and down the mountain. We climbed it twice and climbed down once and then skied down the other side. And it took 21 days to get up and 2 days to get down. So, I mean, our weather window it was really good weather before we got there, and then we were just out there for a long time. So,
and it was just 2 of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were saying that you didn't do pre-drop off. So like had you estimated that you would have
21 days
worth of food?
Yeah.
Right,
and we were actually there for 24 in the end.
Okay. And I guess you just rationed.
Across 24. Yeah. Definitely did some inventories. It's hard to eat when you're up there. Like the higher you get, the harder it is to eat.
Just as an appetite wise?
Uh-huh.
Right, okay,
yeah. And, so there was some stuff that we just had left over, like a lot of bars. But we ran out of like proper dinners and stuff by the end, and we were eating like soup and I don't remember some candies. I brought a whole bag of kettle chips from the east side to the west side, so we finally ate the kettle chips at the end.
And when you were in the crevasse, so it was just the 2 of you on your expedition, but was there anyone else there?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the crew, there was a crew for part of the time, my four friends that were down there. And then on the west side, there was a science crew. Ali Crisatella, who's the co-founder of Girls on Ice. She's like an idol of mine, very good, big role model. She was there doing some radar to then ice core the glacier. And that had never been done before. And they went back the following year and they took these ice core samples. And there was also some people from, they got a Royal Canadian Geographical Society grant, but they were remeasuring the height of the mountain. So they also,
were they?
Yeah.
And was it any?
Not very different at all.
It had moved in the thousands of years that it's been there.
No, I think it came out the same.
Why were they doing that? They just
because we have more precise equipment now, so you just want the detail. I mean, I think it did change, so however tiny amount, like 0.45 meters, or I can't remember actually. But the conclusion I remember was that it didn't change much. Mm-hmm.
So you've obviously, even just with that story, you've obviously operated in some pretty serious terrain or expeditions and stuff like that.
Mm.
What do you think makes someone competent enough to be able to do something like that?
Taking courses and learning from people who know what they're doing officially is a really great way. Mm-hmm. Highly recommended, especially when you get into ski touring and you need to learn about avalanches. It's pretty standard in Canada to take your avalanche skills training course, at least level 1, if not level 1 and 2. And then there's bonus levels now that exist. And similarly for glacier travel, you can take a glacier travel course. And so just building up those skills through the education that's available, and then getting out with people who know more than you so you can ask them a gazillion questions is the tactic that I used most of the time. And then just spending a lot of time outside. For a number of years when I moved to the Rockies, every weekend, every day that I could, I was out either ski touring or climbing or ice climbing. And so building up just time out there, because you can jumpstart a lot of things these days. And there's a lot of people who are like, okay, I want to do this big thing. And they don't have the 5 years that normally you would do before you do the next level. And I'm a little bit of an example of that because I only started ski touring in 2019. I only started all these courses in 2019. I started ice climbing in 2017, but, and I was rock climbing before, trad climbing also kind of 2017. So over 5 years, I went from kind of a sport climber to doing a lot of these mountain things, but I just spent a lot of time and I did a lot of big days, and any opportunity that I found with people, I would jump on. And sometimes I didn't really have the skills to be on the trip per se necessarily, but I had the fitness or the endurance or the positive attitude or the optimism or the treats. So I would just
the kettle chips.
They would still, homemade pretzels, kettle chips, whatever it was. Yeah.
You're bribing your way with these people. You're please take me with you. And do you find that it's you find people are quite willing to take someone, I guess it's, if you're taking it seriously, then they'll be cool, when you come. The differentiate between people who are
all that said, I worked in the field for many years. Mm-hmm. I had a sense of safety already from field work and from, I grew up outside. So I've spent a lot of time outside. I have a good sense of direction and self-care. And, for example, this Logan trip, I went with a friend of mine who's a mountain guide, and he wasn't guiding me, but definitely had way more skills than I did, way more experience. But he saw that he knew me as a person, my attitude. We'd done some alpine adventures with some other friends as well, some highlanding trips in the Valhallas. So he saw me in multi-sport action. He knew that my ice climbing level, which was a higher technical level than the East Ridge of Logan needed. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing was the attitude, and that I could carry a heavy backpack for a long time. And then I knew how to take care of myself, in winter conditions, because we'd done some winter camping and stuff. So it's not necessarily obvious which sets of skills you might need for what type of expedition. And sometimes it's a lot about taking care of yourself and your teammates and communicating well and, being able to, contribute to the team in various ways, depending on who's on the team. And it's not always that you need to be the strongest or the most technical climber or something like that. It can be various factors to coming to play.
Mm. Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about the fact that it's not just the skills, it's the attitude as well. Because what happens if you have someone who's amazing at doing something, but their attitude's terrible, and if you're on a long expedition with them, or just doing anything with them, like after X amount of time, you'll probably be like, it's actually ruining this, or it's like creates a fracture within a team, especially if it's like a team environment.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like a percentage of like, do you think it's quite even? Like it's a 50-50% split? Like you need the skills, but in equal measure, you need to have a good attitude.
Probably not 50-50. I mean, it depends on how long of a trip you're talking about, how remote you're talking, what the objectives are.
You could put up with someone who's annoying for like a day.
Yeah.
Or
but
two.
like 6 weeks, maybe not.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that right now because I have a trip coming up and we're 2 people on it and we're thinking about a third person and it's hard.
Yeah.
There's people who maybe have the skills, but maybe I haven't climbed with them that much, or there's people that, or I don't know them at all. And I'm very hesitant to take them on a trip because it could make or break your trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot of stories about like people coming in from different communities and it really not working very well. And it's hard, especially like the last big trips that I've done have been female teams and, the pool of potential teammates dwindles a lot. So I have connected with people through people. And sometimes that goes well. Sarah Lilly was somebody, that was an example on a trip a couple of years ago that worked well, but sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, it really, I think the more risk and intense objectives that you have and the longer and the farther you're out there, the more important that percentage is. But you can also argue that the technical skills will boost up a little bit as well. But yeah, it's very important to get along with the people that you're out there with.
Because I guess fundamentally at the end of the day, if you're actually in a situation that's like, just say like a risky one, I'd rather have someone who I didn't get on with, but like I believed 100% that they could do the thing that needed to be done, as opposed to someone I'm like, oh yeah, she's fun, they're funny, but can they actually do this thing that they need to do?
Yeah. No, you need that base for sure. Yeah, I think it also depends on the person. And I think through the expedition, if we're talking expeditions or like big objective journey, usually starts with more of the technical side that's important. Like it depends. It really depends. Some people care about it and some people don't. I would say like some people don't worry too much about who they're doing something with as long as they can get it done. And it's like, I'm going to go with you because I know that you have the technical skills, even though I don't really like you very much or whatever it is, but they want to get the objective done. And then I feel like the more people that I've talked to as you get older and you get more experience, the more important part is who you're doing the things with. But that said, as you get older, probably the people that you're connected with, your skills are all growing as well. So their base, when you get more selective, the base of who you're picking from, the base skill set's probably higher.
I would assume the older you get, the more you've had experience of working with different people, and you've probably like weeded out the good and the bad. So you're kind of setting your clan, if you will. But and also with those environments, like they're probably like places and environments where like mistakes matter. How do you factor in like when you're thinking of doing an expedition or just something that there's consequences involved, how do you factor in like a margin of safety?
I would say you decrease your objectives depending on how remote it is. So you would climb at a lower technical level. For example, that's one way of doing it. And then, just being prepared in terms of the training that you've done before the trip, like in terms of skills or fitness, depending on what you need to work on. And then also the equipment that you have. So if there's more risk and there's more remoteness, all of those things need to bump up. I think that's kind of the combination. the trip preparation, and then also how hard you're trying to climb, or how the ski lines, if it's skiing or something like that. Like, there's some things that you just might not do because you're so remote and there's nobody that's going to be there to rescue you, so you don't want to take the risk. Yeah, probably that combination.
Yeah, not that I've done anything similar to what you've done, but I did I just did a hike in the Himalayas. I did the Annapurna base camp. I actually didn't get to the top because I got altitude sickness, but anyway, when we were doing it, like every day, and I mean every day, probably multiple times a day, there was like a helicopter going up and down these valleys. And I remember asking someone, they're like, oh yeah, they're probably like taking people out. And it was like a haunting reminder that like we were just getting further and further.
Right.
And it's quite a negative attitude, because someone else could have been like, oh yeah, but you could equally have been like, look how safe this is, like this helicopter's
you can get a heli.
But I had the negative one where I was like, it was just like a haunting reminder. I was like, well, we are like pretty remote. And I kind of messed with my mind a little bit. I think I got altitude sickness, and then I definitely got altitude sickness like 100%. But I think once that had passed, the next day I was also like kind of frightened from that idea that you're saying, where I was like, this is so remote. Like I didn't have the, no, I was too young, too like inexperienced to, be able to kind of push through it a bit more.
And appreciate it.
Yeah, unfortunately,
It's hard to get remote sometimes.
I know.
Like really remote.
It's really funny because now, so when on the same hike, what age was I? I would have been like 23. I had like, I was like the classic obnoxious kid. I had a speaker, right, on my bag. It was like blasting like house music in the middle of the Himalayas, right? And I passed this older group of people, and the guy, and to be fair, I would never do that, and I would I would equally hate someone doing that. But at this time, the guy, this older gentleman, equally could have perhaps communicated in a better way, but he was like, he was like shouting at us, and he's like, have you never heard of the silence of the mountains? And at the time I was just a little kid, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But now I'm like, oh my God, that would be horrible if you'd gone all the way to the Himalayas. And we were just passing them. It wasn't like we were with them the whole day.
You were following them.
No, but like you go to the Himalayas and you've got like Tiesto like blasting in the distance. Like, yeah, I wish I had appreciated it more at the time. But yeah, the remoteness of it honestly did it did scare me. And now I think I'd appreciate that more. Whereas, yeah, that time I just wasn't in my mind. And I think while it was like, it was quite a safe environment, I guess like I guess with the margin of safety idea, it's like, you can't really control everything, especially in the mountains.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I think that's something I've learned as I've got older, is the illusion that you're in like total control. I mean, as you say, like with the stuff you're saying, like, there's like the preparation, and you can do everything that's going to mitigate it, but there's like that tiny little percent that you're just...
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's tiny and little.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, yeah, depending on where you're at. I definitely feel like there's so much that I don't know and that I don't understand when I'm out there still. And that, yeah, it's a long journey to learn. And I'm doing it on the side of a different job in life generally. I mean, I'm mixing the two a little bit, but, I'm not spending all my time looking at risk in the outdoors. And I think it's also part of the reason why I like it, because I love learning, and my life has been driven a lot by learning. And it's nice to look forward and think, oh yeah, I still have so many more years that I can do so many more outdoor expeditions and learn a ton, and just keep boosting up knowledge and confidence. And
I've definitely said this before, but I find it funny how, like, at our age, I really like that attitude. Like, I think I would hope I'm the same, where, like, we don't think it's something, we're still, like, really young, and to be able to still, like, learn new things and try new things. And I look at, it's really mean, but I look at some of my friends who are doing, like, something, like, really, they enjoy, but perhaps say it's like golf. It's just something you could do when you're like a lot
pretty
older.
Benign.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you're older. I think about that too.
When you're young, I was like, this is my philosophy, and it's not to say it's right. It's just how I think. I'm like, do what you can't do when you're older. Like you can't probably go on a 6-week expedition, or even just like the weekends go ice climbing or multi-pitch climbing or whatever. And obviously that's just me like projecting my ideas in life onto my friends. But yeah, when I see them playing golf, I'm like, you play golf whenever you want.
I've thought about that a lot too. And I actually have used that argument to decide what I want to focus on in my life. But I'm slowly leaning a little bit out of it at the same time, because there's things like birding is an example for me that I'm like, I can bird when I'm an old lady. I don't need to learn that now. But if I learn a little bit now and a little bit throughout the years, I mean, now it's also part of my job to some degree and more, because I did more work with terrestrial mammals and like grizzly bears starting, but now I'm learning more about other species and birding is a part of it. But apart from that, it was like, if I can learn a little bit and have a base, then there's so much that I could learn even in the couple of decades. If it's not a major priority and I'm not putting a ton of time, I can still slowly connect and collect information and learning. And the cool thing I like about learning in the outdoors and biology related things is, and I think I was actually thinking about this listening to the podcast that you did with Sarah too, because it's the same in the geology world and kind of in whatever field you're in. You kind of take the blur of the chaos of all that we have in the world. And the more you're learning about a topic, whether it's flowers or birds or rocks or cars or whatever it is, you just distinguish all the different kinds of things that are in this chaos. And you can understand it in a different way and experience it in a different way. And I've learned and felt that a lot with the outdoors, because I've learned about like plants, and then I learned about terrestrial mammals, for example. And then I was learning about mushrooms and starting to identify and distinguish all the mushrooms. And then I have names for all of these things, and I understand like why they're there or why they're not there. And then you understand more about the ecosystem. Anyways, it's just like, it's fascinating to go through the world with these different lenses, whether it's biology stuff or art related or music related or sports cars related, like I mentioned, just like living through a different perspective because you're gaining information through time. So I've also thought about that and tried to see like, can I learn a little bit about the things that are still interesting to me and maybe hold off on doing some of those things until I'm older, but at least getting like a little bit so I can start uncovering and distinguishing things in the world. And I don't know. Yeah, it's something that I think about too.
So it sounds like exploring wildly to you is more, I want to say the word appealing, but it's more helpful to you than like right now specializing early in like a certain thing.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Probably generally speaking, yeah.
Do you like, are you someone that enjoys variety? Like you do, yeah.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Variety, new places, new peaks. I don't repeat things very much. I'm learning to appreciate the repeat a little bit lately more, I think, but I've never been like a project climber. Now I'm started this training program. I don't normally ever train. It's the first time I'm on a training program, and you do a lot of repeat stuff, and I'm doing things like I'm going on the same trail to get that elevation gain that I need. And normally I would never do that kind of thing, but now it's like there's a different purpose behind it. So it's okay. And there's a different variable that changes, like how much weight I have or how high I'm going or how fast I have to go. There's still variety though, I guess, just a different kind.
Yeah, and you were saying it's kind of like it all bleeds into one another. You know, you're obviously saying that you just want to spend time outdoors, but through that you've got into like the birding, the flowers, the everything else. Like it's quite cool how, I always think that's really interesting how one thing will bleed into like another. And you don't really think about that at the time. You're just like, oh, I just want to try this thing. And then, because yeah, I think if you specialize early, it can probably like make you amazing at something, obviously, like an expert, but it could probably make you like quite close-minded on it as well.
Not having as many perspectives.
Yeah.
I was always jealous when I was younger about people who were very specialized and had like extreme skills in one setting, and maybe they had skills in others, but like they were recognized for being really talented. And I'm still very inspired by people who are really good at what they do. And that's usually requiring some specialization, at least to some degree.
That's funny because I would probably say that about you. I would probably look at you and think that
I'm specialized in something.
Not that you're specialized in something, but you're saying you're inspired by people who I guess you were saying are specialized in something, but I think I would look at you and think that's like from all the stuff that you've done, you know, I think that's quite inspirational in itself. And you've done like a variety, you've done like a bunch of different things.
Yeah. There's two things. I think I'm really inspired by people who are really good at what they do, and you can see it, like that they're passionate about it, and they've just put a lot of time and focus on to something that they love doing. But also I am inspired by people who are good at a lot of different things. So I guess that's kind of contradictory. Like since I was growing up, mixing like science with art and outdoor activities. So if you can if you're a scientist and you also go out into the mountains and you like play the guitar and you know, paint on the weekends, I'm like, whoa, that's sweet.
It's like a full,
but as we get older, you have more time to put into these different buckets, I guess, and then get better.
I even think that about my own life, like how I feel like I'm not yet like a full rounded person. Like there's two things that are, I mean, I don't want to use the word trivial, but like I'm desperately trying to learn Spanish. And by I say desperately, I mean I have on and off for decades now. So it's not like I'm putting that much effort.
It's been a long-term goal.
Yeah. So I guess what I should say is like I really want to learn Spanish, like be fluent in Spanish, not like the Duolingo at the weekend kind of guy. And also like play the piano. Like those are just two things for me that I really want to do, and I can't currently do them. But like, 'cause I think I find that quite similar to you, where like I like people who are like really, I guess, well-rounded is the word I'm using.
Yeah.
Like they're not just this one person. Arguably though, same as you, like I am also still impressed by people who are like this one thing, but I think I don't know, I think it's more of a deeper idea in my mind of like fully exploring life, you know, not getting to an age, whatever it may be, and be like, oh, I only
did this thing.
I only did this thing, yeah.
Totally.
It's just, kind of weird because you can equally say that's amazing that they spent so much time and effort. And I guess if someone really loves it, then that's all they want to do. But I guess it's like an average person. I'm like, I want to get to the end of my life and be like, I've tried all the things.
Did a lot, yeah. Got to know a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah. And I was thinking, to jump back a little bit when we were chatting about the remoteness, how in those situations do you differentiate in your mind between what is helpful fear or useful fear and what is just like unhelpful noise in your head?
That's a good question. I think maybe to start with some context, I feel like I'm not a very fearful person to start with, probably. Like I have fears, but not a ton. Relatively speaking, potentially. I don't know. You know, like I've never been scared of spiders. Like I've never had any weird fears that are like not logical. I am scared of elk because they can chase you and trample you down, for example. And I am like, I obviously have fears of like falling off into the abyss if you're on a knife ridge or something like that. It's not like totally, it's not that I don't have any fear, but I think relatively speaking, I don't have a lot of fears, or I'm not thinking about them a lot. Like I've talked to people recently that have like, I realize we're out in the Alpine and the whole time they're thinking about like, oh, I could fall down here and I could die here and all these things. And I'm like, oh shit, like that's a lot of energy, like thinking about all those things, which is good because that fear is educational. It means there's something that you need to pay attention to, ideally, if it's like within reason and not totally logical. But, yeah, I think so. Learning how, like what fears you have, what type of fears, are they justified or not, is really important. And I forget your original question, but I'm just going on this theme.
No. I mean, just so you're still on it. It was just that, how do you differentiate between unhelpful noise in your mind and fear? And you were given the bigger context that you're not someone that perhaps like gets fearful that often. Yeah.
But then, so whether or not you have a lot of fears, recognizing if they're logical or not, if it makes sense to be fearful in that moment for that, whatever is causing you fear. If it is helpful or not, just being able to recognize that. will help you. Like the ones that aren't helpful, you just acknowledge the thought and like try to move on and focus on something else. Or else if it is helpful, it might be helpful in a way that's like, okay, there's something, either you figure it out right away or you just have a feeling that something isn't right. And then that means you just need to like open up your vision a little bit, see where it's coming from, and like try to get more information in your surroundings if it's that, or ask more questions if it's related to a person. Just try to get more information and then again ask like, is it still justified or not? And if it is, then it's like, what are you going to do to address that fear? I guess as I'm saying this, it seems like I have a very logical way of working through the fear.
Like it,
but I still have like, when I go climbing, I don't like falling. Like I still have a fear of falling. Even though I'll like let go and do some intentional whips or whatever, it's still like not something that I particularly enjoy. And I think something that I've done a lot in my life through, I think mostly sports and more like not adrenaline sports. What do you call them? Extreme sports, maybe, like with highlining. I think it's the first time that I really came to this conclusion of like, the more you push yourself and the further you go and the more fear that you have, it's a good thing to do that and not always be there, but get that reference and then step back. And then the things that you're doing at a lower level, you have a different perspective of what it could be or how hard it can be or how risky it could be or, how much more challenging it might be or whatever it is, more complex. And then go back to the easier stuff. And that easier stuff seems more easy. And then you like work your way up to another step. And then you keep like pushing your boundary a little too far maybe, and then stepping back. And I found that that's helped me a lot to progress quickly. Because there's so much that we fear just because we don't know, we don't understand it. And it's like, you do something that's complicated and that I don't understand. And I'm like, oh, that seems really, really hard or really risky or whatever it is. But it's mostly because I don't understand. And I'd be like, oh, you seem crazy because you're doing this thing. And that's like crazy. But if you actually learn about it, understand it, try it yourself, the crazy level or the fear level is probably going to decrease a lot.
Yeah, I kind of thought that with, I don't like flying. And I actually, this year, I'm going to book myself onto like one of these like flight courses because of what you just said there though, because I think just to put it plainly, like my fear of flying is because I don't know what's going on and I don't understand it. So I'm like, I think if I was to actually do a course, it would make me better because I'd be like, oh yeah, this is happening because of that thing and the noise is from this.
Totally.
Yeah, because a lot of fear comes from like not knowing, whereas if you're just saying, no, this is the thing.
And I think it's like that fear can be a barrier to achieving what you're after potentially. And it also, at some point, the fear and the unknown is like something that you chase a little bit. And maybe when you get a certain level or maybe it's just something that certain people are drawn to, but like the fear of the unknown is attractive at some point too, because it's like, you want to go out into these remote spaces and be in a place where you're like, I don't really know what's going to happen. It might be scary. It might be hard, but that's what you're after is like putting yourself in that scenario and seeing how you fare.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think like fear, and I'm probably speaking from my perspective here, is like, I think fear for a lot of people is like, it limits them and what they end up doing. Like, I heard this really simple quote and it says, if you weren't afraid, what would you do? And I actually do think about it a lot because I do get fearful of things, and it doesn't need to be like, highlining or something that people would probably aesthetically think that's like quite an obviously scary thing to do. It could be anything, like even just the podcast or reaching out to someone or sending an email. Yeah. Like you're like, if I wasn't afraid, would I send this or would I do this? And I'm like, yeah, I would. Then I try and use that as like my barometer to. But with the highlighting, so if I'm oversimplifying it, like in my mind, highlighting is like, highlining is like slacklining, but obviously like significantly higher. So you've got like two like valleys almost at times. And and you put like a highline. Because the reason I'm saying that though is because for someone who doesn't like to fall, that seems like that would be, not that you're falling, but like,
well, you can.
At least with rock climbing, there's like a surface that you're very quickly on. Whereas highline is like,
there is no surface.
There's no surface.
But it's totally perspective, because this is the classic conversation that I've had for so many years. I don't highline that much anymore, but like I used to more than a decade ago. And the thing about it's really parallel with climbing, because you have a wall and you might whip on a rope. You're wearing a harness, you're wearing a leash. Same thing with highlining.
Oh, it makes me sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But instead of falling on a rock face where you might hit the rock or hit the ground, or your gear might come out, all of these things, you're falling into space, which has like, there's very little to hit. So it's actually not as dangerous as climbing. In many ways, the only dangerous part is setting up, or the most dangerous part is setting up the highline. And when you're at the very start, like if you fall at the start, then you could either hit the cliff face that's beside it or the tree or whatever it is. And also depending on how long and how far the line is, you could zip down. But it's in some ways safer than climbing, and you set up your anchors and there's a lot of redundancy. Everything is like doubled up. And years ago, we would use materials that were like way too strong, like industrial slings, that are, thousands of kilonewtons stronger than any whip on a highline would ever, any forces that a whip on a highline would ever produce. So it's like, once you get into that and you go out and you highline and you try it and you see the systems and you understand the systems that you're using and maybe like the forces behind it or something, then your perspective might change and you're like, oh wait, maybe it's not as dangerous. Obviously, when you're sitting on the highline or standing on it, you're like, oh my God. But there's nothing to hit when you fall.
Yeah, I think listen to you say that. It's naive of me to think that I actually think I would rather hit something, because in my uneducated mind, because what you're saying makes sense. Like, you're not going to hit the wall, so therefore you're not going to hurt yourself. You're just going to fall into space. Yeah. Weirdly, my mind is like, I'd rather hit the wall because at least I've got something to like touch. I think the idea of falling into space is actually, well, physically safer. It's more mentally terrifying for me.
Well, yeah. And highlining is a huge mental sport.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
But you need physical, like your body needs to react really quickly and you need like core strength and stuff. But the mental part is by far the biggest piece. And
I think, like, back to our conversation about like stuff bleeding into life, like highlining must, like the calmness and like the concentration and all the stuff that goes with it that you need for that. Like, that seems like such a high, I'm going to use the word extreme, but I don't mean it to sound like it's kind of crazy extreme, but it's like such an extreme scenario to put yourself in.
It is.
Therefore, like that makes total sense that, it would therefore make you way calmer and like a completely normal scenario, which is like hiking on a trail.
And that's that pushing beyond, putting yourself in scenarios that are like way more, dangerous or extreme or something. And then you come back down to something that isn't, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to fear as much now, or I'm not going to worry as much because this is way more benign than what else I've experienced or been involved with or whatever it is.
And it sounds like I was going to ask you like what you thought it means to move like carefully as opposed to fearfully. But it sounds like for you, it's like just like the preparation and the kind of logic that goes into the decisions that you're making prior to doing the thing. You're like, I've thought this all through. I've done the X, the Y, and the Z.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely someone who prepares a lot. I like to be spontaneous and I like to do new things and I like to try new things. So those are kind of opposing, but, yeah, I think the more that you understand the systems of whatever you're getting into, the more ease you'll have when you're out there or when you're trying. Yeah.
And you've done, so even just in this conversation alone, and am I right in saying you did a 37-day expedition in the Monastery Mountains? Is that right?
Yeah, ski traverse.
So that, and everything that we've literally just talked about, it's obviously like quite complex in some way or another environments or situations, like even with the Highland and obviously getting it set up and stuff like that. And a lot of it, I mean, all of it kind of revolves around working in the outdoors or being in the outdoors. As someone who you can obviously do both, and by both I mean you're very much outdoors, but you're obviously very studious in the fact that you've got a master's and done other things. What do you think the outdoor environments teach you that, like, I mean, a classroom would never be able to teach you? Like in that expedition, for example, and what do you learn from that you just can't learn in a classroom environment?
Gosh, there's so much. There's so much that you can't learn. I mean, the thing that is coming to mind for the Monastery ski traverse is kind of getting away from all the complexity of life that is indoors, whether it's technology or just like busy city life and work, depending on what your work is. But you just kind of have to learn how to survive again in a basic way, in a simple way. And that can feel, it depends maybe on who you are, but that can be very refreshing compared to the chaos of our indoor or within city lives. Yeah, and I think just like basic skills of observing is huge. You can observe indoors, but observing a lot, maybe different layers. And there's, like we talked about a little bit before, there's just a lot that you don't control. And like in this environment, for example, in this room, there's not a lot of variability or chaos. And you get a lot of that when you're outside. And you learn a lot from that and putting yourself in those environments.
Yeah, almost sounds like I used the word complex environments, but it can initially sounded like you were actually thinking the opposite way, where like going into these like outdoor expeditions and stuff actually simplifies everything and slows everything down for you, as opposed to the online world where we're all constantly connected.
Yeah, both are true. I would say the simplifying and I think that came from like the monasteries as an example, like 37 days, you're out there for a really long time. You've done a lot of the preparation already. And you're just like moving through terrain and you're making decisions, but it's on like the survival base level. You're not really, I guess it depends how much preparation you've done, but like you're on trip and you're in for the ride and you have to deal with everything that comes up. But otherwise it's like, you're not really asking, it's so different because you have a destination, a place that you're supposed to get to maybe the next night. Like for us, it was moving camp every day. So it's like you have an objective and we need to get to this place. But it's not like, what are all the things that I need to do next week and next month and with work and outside of work? And it's just like, where do we need to camp? Where are we? Where's our food cache if we're picking up a food cache? Like, where are we going to navigate if the avalanche conditions are good or bad? But it's all like focused and related to surviving and continuing moving. It's simpler in that way. But within that simple part of the experience, I would say there are all the complexities once you get into more remote and then terrain differences and stuff like that.
So it sounds like there's perhaps less things going on, but those things themselves can have more depth to them. Like obviously you were saying like with avalanches and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah.
And it's nice to simplify in that way. Not that the whole experience is simple itself, but I mean, I think it's particularly something that I appreciate because I do a lot of things. I mean, everybody says they're busy. Everybody's doing a lot of things, right? I'm not to say that not everybody else is, but I do, like, I work and I volunteer and I do the mountain stuff and like, I don't have a lot of downtime. I have a lot of productive time. And I try to take some time and space to do things that are less intensive or less productive, to balance. But generally speaking, I'm like usually pretty busy with all of those things. And so when I go out on a trip like this, it's like 90% I can just, put away. And I can just really focus on where I am and what I'm doing today and now, and then in the next 5 minutes, and where maybe I got to camp tomorrow, and like that's pretty much it. And that way, it's simpler.
Yeah, I was just thinking there, like it's funny how you're saying you're someone that's like go go go, and the only way that you can slow down is by going on like a background check. Right. I think like most people slow down, they'll like not like order pizza and watch a movie for like a whole weekend, and you're like, yeah. I slow down by doing a 37-day expedition in the wilderness.
Yeah, I mean it's different time scales. Yeah. This is like
and it does slow down.
Multiple years over the years, I guess, but. Yeah, it is nice to like sit in the sun and read a book. I've been doing that a little bit more. Yeah. Not the last few weeks, but the last few months. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. I could do this when I'm older, but it's really nice right now.
Yeah. What book are you reading? You don't have to say it if you don't want to.
No, I was reading training books. It was very productive. Yeah. Very productive reading.
I actually had the same today. I bumped into a friend in town and I was taking a book back to the library and they're like, oh, what book have you got? And it was it was a manager book. Like it was a book on like how to bring the best out of people.
Oh, that's great.
I know, but it was like such a like, it just wasn't a cool book. I was like, yeah, it's like a management book. And they're like, oh, cool. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty, not lame, but.
It depends what you're into. Yeah. I feel like there's lots of questions I could ask about what you learned in your management book.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It wasn't the best book, to be honest with you, but.
Darn it.
Yeah. Are you someone that like actively tries to slow their life down? I feel like I'm doing that constantly. I'm constantly trying to find moments in time where I'm like not doing anything, or I would say that I'm also quite a go person. Yeah. I honestly wouldn't say as much as you, but like I try and find just moments of the day where I'm just,
those are very refreshing and important. Generally I would say that I like to plan a lot, like I mentioned, and be prepared. So I definitely do look ahead and make plans. And I like to have those goals to work towards, but I also feel that I can live in the moment and be in the present. And for example, if I'm going to visit family, it's kind of another time where I like try to get rid of all the other stuff and really be like with my family, with my nieces and nephews, and just like play with them and spend time with them. And in those ways, that's like another example maybe of a little bit more breathing time in some way. But I've done like a lot of yoga in my life for many, many years. And that has, depending on what type you do, you definitely can gain strength and flexibility and work on those things. But it's also, I think, more for me, just a time where I shut off a lot of the other stuff and I can breathe and focus on my body movement, and like the rest kind of crumbles away. So those kind of practices I've done over the years as well. And that's one example. I do a lot of like kitchen cooking stuff too. That is another example maybe of where I'm leaving a lot behind in just like food processing or making sourdough bread or whatever it is. Like
that's what I've been doing sorry, my face out there. I have, as of this morning, I now have an active sourdough starter.
Congratulations.
Oh my God. It was like the longest, most torturous. I don't know why I I had followed like someone's YouTube video on how to make a sourdough starter. Wasn't working. And then I messaged my mate who works at Wildlife Bakery, and he was like, change the ratio of grams. And within like a couple of days, it was working. But I've been for like the last 3 weeks feeding this like jar of goo. So sorry, when you said sourdough there, I was like, yes, someone else who knows the pain.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which also, go back to what we were saying earlier, like me making fun of my friends playing golf, like I am also like planning to spend my weekend like making sourdough.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing of like sourdoughs. It takes a little bit of time and investment to start it. I remember being like, oh my God, there's so many ways to do this, and there's so many recipes, and it's really complicated, and there's all these steps, and it takes a lot of time. But once you invest that in the start, afterwards you just get to enjoy like really tasty bread that is probably healthier than what you buy for the rest of your life, potentially, if you do it for years.
I know.
So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I know. I was like, for all those reasons is why I was trying to do it. But I was just like, honestly, like, I think I was just making a mess of it at the beginning. But anyway, so I wasn't one to talk to you about my sourdough obsession. But
it's a good one.
Yeah, when you, like, with regards to, so you're someone who, you both study and climb in ecosystems. With someone who has probably like quite a unique perspective in that sense on it, how would you define responsible use? Because it seems to be quite like a hot topic.
In the environment, in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Responsible use of resources.
Of the resources, yeah.
There's general principles that people talk about. Leave no trace and don't feed the wildlife. And, I do all of those things. I think that I, as a wildlife ecologist, have been educated a lot about how we treat the environment. And so through my work professionally, I do that. In my recreational activities, I do that. And I think just probably the way my approach to a lot of the things that I do is simple and environmentally friendly, because usually it's like human powered, minimalist, kind of lightweight, simple systems doing things. I guess that's more true for my personal recreation. Sometimes with field work, we're flying helicopters. And anytime you use helicopters, that's like a big environmental impact. And honestly, when there's helicopters, I'm like, heck yeah.
I do.
So I'm not to the extreme of, being like, I'm not going to do this job because I don't want to fly in a helicopter. And I do travel and I fly in planes. So I think the more that you learn about the environment and the risks that there are and the risks there are to species, and whether it's plants or animals, and resources like fresh water and that sort of thing. I think just respecting those environments and having appreciation for them and trying to learn from them without destroying them, just in the way as a general core to what you do is a good approach. But we can't be doing the best all the time, and there's different fields potentially where we'll maybe be more environmentally, ethically positive versus causing some detriment in some way. But trying to balance it, or just not do it too excessively. If there are negative impacts, then
I was chatting to someone today who was saying that I think they were saying the idea of that, like, you don't really know how many climbers are in the Bow Valley. Like, there's not like a census or anything of like how many people. So, but obviously it's getting generally more popular, and locations and stuff are getting busier, and just like the simpleness of people trampling around, because there's more people on a site, and they have in a staging area, and you have to like stand out in the way to let people pass. And, they were kind of making the point that like even in, there's that kind of idea of responsible use perhaps for like, maybe like on a Parks Canada level of like how many people can do this thing.
What's the limit?
Because even if it's say like 100 people go to like a climbing site and they're all like leave no trace with regards to like their rubbish and stuff, say like the next year is 200 people, like it's definitely going to have an impact on the ecosystem that they're in.
And the wildlife that's around. There's a lot of species that are, as soon as there's humans in the area, even if it's like 4 people in a week or something, like it can have a huge impact in that they'll avoid that whole area. I think like there's kind of competing factors too in the big picture. You want to preserve these spaces and resources and use them in a responsible way and not pass these thresholds for species or the environment itself. But at the same time, because humans have such a big impact in so many different ways, there's the argument that getting people out there into those spaces and getting them to appreciate it and respect it and getting to know it more, like I was kind of talking about before, will give them potentially a sense that they should be more careful or they should do something to help it, or that they'll just understand if there is a problem that comes up or a topic that comes up or some issue, whether it's within the town or within a park, that they'll have some feeling towards it, and that feeling can make them act potentially in a bigger way. So I also think that it's still really important to have people in these spaces and not just close them off. But it depends on the context. Like if there's a highly sensitive species in a very small area and any foot passage would cause that species to go extinct, for example, then you obviously want to close it off completely because it's not worth having humans go there. But in general, it's usually good to get people out, get people to see glaciers or be on a glacier. And there's a lot of people who are into outdoor activities here, and I've thought a lot about conservation and guiding and like bringing people out and combining the two and education within that, and the importance of talking about the ecosystems and the risks that we have for species or plants or glaciers or whatever it is to the people who are spending a lot of time there, in hopes that like for their own personal use, they'll maybe treat the environment differently or choose to do activities differently to have less impact, or they'll have an understanding and respect for that environment and then pass it on to their network or their connections. And it's the same thing. Like if you get people who have never been into the mountains and they don't know where their water comes from and they live in a city, then it's good to like also get them out there and say like, hey, this is where your water comes from. These are the issues that we're facing here. And like, you can stand and see the impact, and then that's going to last longer and potentially impact their decisions and all sorts of things, I think.
Yeah, it's like a fine balancing act of getting people out, getting people into the environments to have a more of a connection with it. Because yeah, someone who grows up in the prairies, like if they have never seen a glacier and or the mountains, if there's like a policy affecting them, then as in affecting those things,
yeah,
then they're just going to be like,
they're disconnected,
whatever. Whereas if they've been there and they've seen it, but then it's also there's the conversation of how many
can be there.
Yeah, and I'm part of the problem with this, but how many people are, millions of people like a summer are coming into the parks. I guess getting more and more. It's just that like,
but there's a difference there between just like straight tourism of like, come and check out Moraine Lake, or Lake Louise and look at the glaciers and then take a picture and leave. Or bringing people to the spaces in an environment where they're learning about the glaciers and the water and where it goes and the problems that we're having.
So more like intentional education as opposed to just the Instagram tourism.
Totally.
Yeah.
Those are very different things.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been up in Moraine Lake and or just anywhere like that, and I will hear the exact words. It looks exactly like it does on Instagram, which is fair enough. Like that's where they've seen it, but I find it comical how often I hear that. Or like see people step off a bus, get a picture and step back on it.
Totally.
They're just sitting on their phone in the bus, like looking at the pictures and it's like outside the window.
It's gone to such a level that it's, you know, for people who live out here and see it, it's like we are obviously, most of us have a bias of being like, hey, don't you want to put your phone away and appreciate this place a little more or something? But it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's gone to such a level that now we have so many people in the parks too. There can't be education programs or, you know, tours that are connecting with everybody and having a meaningful impact on every individual. But if there was, that would be very
ideal.
Nice.
And I mean, I've only been here like 5.5 years maybe. And it was like, I came in COVID. So I want to ask you a question because I don't feel like I have a good perspective on how the, like, say, like the Bow Valley ecosystems have changed in that time. Because I came in COVID where I was like, there's no one here. So there was no one here. It was like cleanest place I've ever been in my life. And then obviously, you know, 5 years later, it's probably just somewhat back to like pre-COVID levels. How has there been, this may be a naive question, but has there been a noticeable change for you in like the ecosystems around us here in the Bow Valley? Not just with people coming and going, but like climate change and the bigger picture of the world.
Like within the past 5 years?
Just since you've been here.
Yeah, which has been, I've been in the Rockies since 2017. So not 10 years, but a little bit more than 5. I think the like ecosystem impact I haven't noticed particularly personally that much on a big picture. I think that in terms of like the number of people who are here or not here, I think that's what you were referring to with COVID is just like the amounts of people.
Yeah.
There have been changes like with glaciers that I've seen already, even over just a couple of years. And the rapid decline and receding of those glaciers. So that's been very, very noticeable. Also just like regular changes in our winters and in our seasons.
In what way with the seasons?
Well, just that there's, and I say regular, but it's not that regular, at least not for me. There has been like, for example, really good ski seasons with a ton of snow, and then there's seasons that are totally dry. So I've seen in that way, I've seen changes in the ecosystems. But part of that is regular cycles, and part of that is climate change impacts. But I have noticed the change in the amount of people and in changes in like access and changes in, I think I'm mostly referring to parks, changes in, systems or structures that are within parks to mostly for the benefit of limiting access, which you face as a local recreationist as well. When there's limits for like the mass tourism, you also face limits of what you can access potentially with like not being able to drive up to Moraine Lake anymore or, things like that.
I think they've done one for this summer about canoeing. Like you can't canoe in Minnewanka, Louise, or Moraine Lake. I think.
Oh, I haven't heard that yet.
Someone told me this, so it might not be gospel, but I think that's what they were saying. Apart from, you know, if it's one of the companies that operates out of each of those lakes,
right?
Obviously, but like I don't think you can take.
You can't take your own canoe.
No, I think it was all to do with because they obviously had that system in place, which was like. And I never knew what the name of it was, but effectively, if you came with your own boat or canoe, you were supposed to fill out a thing, and I think they just, my understanding from this person is just that they had no the reality of policing that was just like didn't work. So they're now just like, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because
That's
of like
bad.
some like water that this clearly shows my lack of education on the subject, but like something in the water that's getting transported, they don't want it to like affect the other water systems.
Invasive species.
Invasive species.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Those aquatic invasive species. Yeah. There's a lot of regulations with that. But the reality is that, yeah, they are spreading and they can be detrimental at the same time. So you do need these policies, especially with the increase in the number of people who are coming into these spaces who might not have the education to, whether or not you're educated, but just like the specific education of like, hey, we have this invasive species problem. It's really important that we don't just like take this boat and plop it into the next lake and spread the species. And that's what I was talking kind of about before as well, of just like with all these people, the higher the number, the more you need to educate them, whether it's on something like that or just, leave no trace basics, because not everybody comes in with the same background and the same context or the same connection to the place. So they'll just potentially treat it in a way that's not beneficial. And that's huge with wildlife and like taking pictures of wildlife and stopping on the road and feeding the wildlife and all of those things. Like people do what there's a lot of science about that topic, but it's something that somehow, whether it's some photo that they've seen or a video, or that they just think it's really cute and you want to like feed it and see it closer. I don't know where that comes from. It's kind of general. Like if you have a chipmunk, you kind of want to feed it something and see what it does. I don't know where that comes from, but it's like, there's a lot of negative impact if you're doing that behavior that people won't understand, and they're not going to think about all those things. They're just going to see the cute chipmunk and want to give it part of your cracker or whatever. Whereas like, then the chipmunk sticks around and then it's a problem chipmunk. This is a very small, low impact species I'm talking about, but you could say the same thing about grizzly bears, and then, and then they got to destroy the bear.
Like, I think it's, since living here, realized like common sense isn't actually that common.
Yeah. It can.
Especially with grizzly bears, the amount of people I have seen get like within feet, like, like single digit feet of a grizzly bear. And I'm just,
yikes.
There's like part of me that's like, you're a crazy person. And then the irrational part of me is like, yeah, but I bet you they're getting like a sick picture, which I would not risk getting. But, it kind of baffles me. The amount of times I've seen people get close to bears. And you're just like,
and elk.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is. Now, I would say, while I wouldn't get close to elk, I can, and again, this is probably like a lack of education on my part. Now I know not to go near elk, but see, be fair, like when I first came here, even coming from Scotland, I think I would instinctively know not to go near an animal. Like just like, no matter what animal it was, right? But I wouldn't say that I would have like a fear of elk. Whereas like bears, I definitely did. Bears.
But that's because we don't have, children's stories about the scary, aggressive elk that was attacking all the humans. Like, but we do have that with bears. Like we hear about the stories. You see it in films or in movies. So, a lot of those fears that are ingrained in our society, like you take someone from a country who doesn't have grizzly bears, they're not going to have the same fear as a Canadian who knows about grizzly bears. Like, though there is some level of intrinsic fear of an animal, which I think, especially if they're staring at you and they're fixated on you, then it can be very scary, regardless of what it is. Maybe not a chipmunk, but even still, I've been attacked by a squirrel and I had, 14 scratches on my face, almost hit my eye and ear. And although it happened really fast, I didn't really have that much time to fear originally. Now I have a greater fear of squirrels than I did before. But yeah, I think it depends on the context of, where that person comes from and if their background or their upbringing has exposed them to whatever stories, or whether they have like family members who have been bluff charged by a bear or chased by an elk or something, then their perspective will change. But I think the majority of people, it's a little bit weird with grizzly bears in your photo example, because I would think that the majority of people would be scared about bears given the rep that they have. But like with sharks, that's another classic example.
Yeah, sorry.
But I don't understand, like, where does that fear get cut off by this need for photos? I don't know.
Yeah, because I would never get close to, I would never even think about getting close to a shark or a bear, right? But just when you said that, I was like, yeah, I guess, like, if you never see someone trying to take a selfie with a shark, which you could in this day and age do because of cameras and whatnot and video, but weirdly with bears, it's this, because even so in the UK, we obviously have no bears, and even with, I would never have, like, I remember coming here, like, I was like, yeah, I want to see a bear, but from like a mile away. Like, there was no part of me that...
This might be a problem of the teddy bear.
Yeah, and well, people have said that, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're cute and fluffy, and it's a stuffed animal that we all, like, adore, and you're like, oh, look, it's a bear, it's like my teddy bear. I'm going to take a picture. Yeah. I'm saying that with some sarcasm, but maybe there's an impact.
I have heard people
like
say
Winnie
that.
the Pooh.
Yeah, like Winnie the Pooh, exactly. Yeah, no, I have heard people say that, but I think, we were kind of more like alluding to like a lack of education, perhaps, or maybe just a lack of education with people in
specific education, potentially, but yeah. And
with regards to like your yourself, like, what do you think people misunderstand about being someone who's works in the field as a wildlife ecologist? Because my naive mind would be like, oh, it's just like you like walk around the fields and it's blue skies out all the time and you're just picking up flowers, or what do people misunderstand?
I mean, as a biologist, I think one of the things that kept coming up for a long time was just, contrary to your badger story, is the assumption that I know everything about all animals, right, okay. Which is like...
Did you know a badger?
Pardon?
Did you know what a badger was?
Yeah.
That's not one of the ones you don't know.
No, yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, people will come up and ask or assume that you know a lot about every species, and that's something that I strive to, or that I admire in biologists who know a lot about a lot of species, for example, as a wildlife biologist. But there's my knowledge is very limited to the projects that I've worked on and the species that I've worked with. And even within that, it's like, I know a lot about grizzly bears, but I mostly know about grizzly bears in Alberta, because when I was working for the grizzly bear program for 5 years, it was only Alberta context, which is very different environment-wise, behavior-wise, population issues. Like, it's the same range, it's the same species, but a very different context in Alberta than in BC. And, there's a ton that I don't know about grizzly bears in BC, even though I was like specialized in grizzly bear ecology. So, I mean, that's one thing I think in my professional career of like being a little bit misunderstood in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you talk to a doctor, you expect them to know like everything, but obviously doctors also specialize in like surgery or dermatology, or but yeah, you hear someone's a doctor and you're like, oh, I've got this like rash on my foot.
Yeah, tell me.
And someone's like, oh, like showing you a picture of some animal from like the Amazon jungle. I was on holiday in Costa Rica, can you tell? And you're like, yeah, I can tell you about bears.
I mean, and I love those questions. I love it when people send me tracks, like snow tracking, which I've done in my jobs, but also recreationally, like on the Monashee ski traverse, I was snow tracking. And it's like, these little mysteries that are fun to solve. So I do like that within my realm of knowledge. But,
so what would be like an example of like the difference between a grizzly bear in Alberta and a grizzly bear in BC?
There are a lot of examples. One typical one, I mean, grizzly bears in BC, they're known for eating salmon and a lot of fish. And Alberta bears don't. The diet has barely any fish at all. And they don't eat salmon. There aren't salmon. So they eat a lot of ungulates like deer, elk, moose, and
Berries?
lots of berries,
Right.
so many berries and ants, but not fish. So that's a huge difference just in terms of like what habitats they're in, what their diet's made out of, how big they are respectively, because the Alaskan bears with all the salmon run, they're huge because they have access to a lot more nutrients and a lot more resources, and it's easier. So they're bigger. They have more cubs that way. So it's just like ripple effects of that sort of thing.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie, The Grizzly Man?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Definitely.
I've actually never seen it. I was weirdly,
quite the film.
Yeah, I was weirdly listening to a podcast or something that was talking about it. I think they were sadly actually talking about the fact that there was like some footage about when he actually passed away. There was like audio recording. But anyway, I've never actually seen that movie. Would you recommend it? Is it good?
I would. I mean, it's definitely a character, and it's like, it's both fascinating and like, what the heck? Like, how is this happening? But it's an interesting story, and there's some quite rare human animal behaviors that you see there, and like the connections that this grizzly man had with the bears and other species, which is cool to see. But also you're like, is this cool to see? Yeah.
Because
watch.
You wouldn't want everyone doing that, because then it would, you were talking about, problem chipmunks should also have like problem bears, or like bears that would probably have attacked people out of fear, and then they have to get put down because human interaction and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking the conversation totally sidestep here. So you mentioned before Girls on Ice.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me more about that and your involvement within it? Am I right in saying you're the president?
I am the president.
That's very fancy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been involved with Girls on Ice Canada for over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Over 6 years now, actually.
I was talking to someone today. I was like, I'm doing a podcast with Isobel, and they were like, didn't know you, but then I was like, oh yeah, she's like done Girls on Ice, and they were like, oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spread the awareness. Right. I've been involved for many years now, and it only started the Canadian branch. There's this Girls on Ice Canada is part of Inspiring Girls Expeditions, which is in the US, but also in other countries around the world. So the Canadian branch is one that's only existed since 2018, started forming in 2015, but the first expedition that we had, which is the main core of our program, was in 2018. And so I've been a part of it since 2020, and moved through many roles as a volunteer and also as a science instructor on the expeditions that we run. And then I was the vice president and the president, and also sit on the board. So I've had a lot of roles within this organization, but the expeditions that we run are a space where we are combining outdoor skills, science, and art. So we're trying to make these wholesome individuals. It's 12-day expeditions that we run, and they're in the summer. They're tuition free for participants. It's focused on female identifying youth and non-binary and more identities, but primarily bringing them out into the alpine environment and onto glaciers, and working through the skills of how to get to those spaces, and then also teaching them about glaciers and about the ecology and species that we are seeing, and the scientific process, and how we can think about the world through science and also through art, and how those are combined and how they're different. There's a lot of different topics. It's quite an intensive program. But we work with 2 guides and 2 science instructors on these 12 days. And the goal is to inspire and get the participants exposed to different career options or different ways of living life, and that you can do multiple things, like be a scientist and also do a lot of outdoor recreation, or be a guide and have a science background, or whatever it is. We're hoping to encourage them to be curious and find confidence in themselves and connect with peers that are like-minded, and then be able to do whatever it is that they want to do. It doesn't need to be science. It doesn't need to be becoming a guide, but bringing them into those environments and then hoping that they can apply what they learned and be leaders in whatever space it is that they find themselves in the future.
And is it, are there enough people where like you are cherry picking people, or is it, how big is it? Like, cause you said it's tuition free.
It's tuition free. Yeah.
So how do people apply?
There's a big application process.
Right, okay. And is there more people applying than there are spots?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're very intentional about the team that we pick. So it's 10 participants per program.
Right.
And the idea is to bring diverse backgrounds, diverse skills, diverse interests all together so that they can learn from each other. But we do try to select people who we think it's going to be a transformational experience. Mm-hmm. So often, it's really based on the individual and their story. So we hope to hear their story through the application questions, but it's a very intentional team selection. And it's, based on the information that they provide. And it's a big process, that piece.
And you were saying it's transformational. Like, what would you say is the biggest shift that you see in people from like throughout the course from year 1 to 12?
It's really dependent on the individual, because we challenge them physically, intellectually, socially, and emotionally.
In 12 days?
In 12 days.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, they're like full-on programs from morning till night. People get a lot out of it in those different realms, depending on their experience and their skills and their weaknesses, I guess, or their context. So for somebody who has, for example, grown up in rural BC, has gone camping, has gone hiking, has more of like, maybe grew up on a farm, something like that. Wow, I'm describing myself. It won't be as big of a shock on them for the potentially for the physical part or for like the environment that we're bringing them to. If they've already seen mountains and glaciers and that sort of thing, maybe they haven't been on it. Almost always all participants have never been on a glacier. So that's usually a highlight for many of them. But for that kind of more outdoorsy person, the physical part won't be as much of a challenge. So maybe it's a science piece that they're like, maybe they're into arts or they're into social studies and they never really liked science. But then we teach the science in a way that they realize like, oh, actually, I want to do this social studies, but I want to bring in this science part more into that, or realizing like there's science to art and that you can think about all these different fields in life. And again, having those various perspectives can be more informative or just give you a better understanding of what you're doing or a more rounded understanding and experience of what you're doing. And for example, a lot of the science that we do is really looking at the environment and making observations and being curious and asking questions and then learning how to collect data and answer those questions. So we go through the scientific process with them. And the goal is not for them to be scientists, like I mentioned, but everybody can have scientific thoughts and look at something through a scientific lens or, kind of go through that process potentially in different ways. And then, so that individual who maybe science wasn't their big focus might pick up more from that experience and want to incorporate it in their lives in a different way, or realize like maybe science isn't that bad because it's not just math in a book.
Yeah. It
can be very different. It can be very outdoorsy. It could be incorporated with art and so much more. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it's, they come from a small community. They haven't had support from their family or their friends. They feel like they're the only ones who are into the outdoors, for example, and they come from flatlands and the prairies, whatever the story, or the big city, and they come into a space like this and they're like, wow, I've never experienced an environment like this. And it changes their whole perspective of how much time they spend outside or what kind of activities they do. And maybe they want to pick up hiking after or they wanted to, but now they have the inspiration and like the connections and the experience to actually do it for themselves. So that's another example of kind of the various transformational impacts that can happen, but it's really individual. And on the social side, just connecting with people who have similar interests or goals, that they might not have had in their hometown or their school or their family, and seeing that there are other people out there who maybe think in the same way that they do, or just have a different perspective from what they've been exposed to, can change a lot. Seeing that in other people, and then, feeling, oh, it makes sense. Like, I'm not the only person who's interested in this. And, so that can be a huge thing for people as well. And the friendships that are created in those programs, for a lot of participants, are the biggest piece. I mean, as a teenager, your friends are usually like your world also. So it's really important. And we were very intentional about the space that we create on those programs. So it's like, for some people, they might not have had good friendships or been able to make friends easy. And on these expeditions, it's like, you get really good connections really quickly. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. Like, I thought I was just, had no ability to do that, but in the right context and the right space. So that could be the first time somebody experiences that, which can be huge, just in terms of like human connection. Yeah. So it's so many ways.
Yeah. If you're all getting put onto programs, you're automatically put into like a friendships group. And obviously if you're like, cherry picking might not be the right word, but if you're being very intentional with who you're selecting on it, then I would assume that all the people that are on it have a similar kind of personality or ethos or mindset, or no?
Maybe in some ways, but again, the goal is to have differences, right, okay. so that but to a limit. Like, we want. Normally, we try to have like a few people who have a strength in this or an interest in that, so that they're not alone. Right. But it's not a whole group that's the same. Like, we don't want all, people who are really social and, leaders and that sort of thing already. We want to mix it with different types of people so that, there's exposure to difference, and then that there's, the beauty of humans is that we're so diverse in many ways too. So having them see that and learn that there can be strengths and different perspectives, and that if there's conflict, you can grow from it. I mean, there's so much.
And of all the people that you've seen go through it, what do you think is the most common trait that you see in people that makes you think, like, that makes them really coachable in those kind of environments and get the most out of them? If there is one trait, I know that sometimes there may be a bunch.
I don't know about one trait. The thing about this program is that they want to be on it most of the time, or like all of the time. I mean, it's a voluntary application. Maybe they have had parents that supported them or pushed them into it a little more or something, or they weren't sure. But generally speaking, they all want to be there. So you're starting from a base of, generally speaking, a little bit more coachability, or just like being able to pass on information or get them engaged and involved. There's kind of a default level of that. And it's in the summer and it's an outdoor program. So a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of learning from the space that you're in, like land-based learning. And again, a lot of diversity in how we teach and what we're teaching, that you kind of there's intention behind our education, our curriculum and our educational approach to have our lessons and our activities student-based. Like, it's coming from their interest. It's coming from their curiosity. We're facilitating a lesson, but the core of the learning ideally is coming from them as well. There's a lot about the curriculum that we could talk about, but for example, we don't just want to tell answers. Like, if the participants ask a question, we usually try to guide them to figure out the answer. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's different ways in our curriculum and in the structure of our program, and also just the fact that it's outside, it's in the summer, it's with a bunch of other participants who want to be there, and they're like intense because it's long days and we're doing a lot of things. But generally speaking, we have participants who are very open to what we're doing, mm-hmm. which is what we're trying to achieve. But also, yeah, I think we have a different default starting compared to like a classroom at school. It's and very different.
You were saying that there were maybe it sounds like branches of like the Girls on Ice prior to the one in Canada. Do you have like control over, like, can the curriculum be changed by you based on the fact that we're here and it may be different?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
We have a base like philosophy and approach. All of the programs for Inspiring Girls are 12 days long. Mm-hmm. They all, have this focus of physical, social, intellectual, emotional kind of challenges throughout the program, and science is a key part in all of them. But we have Girls on Ice Canada, which is glacier based, but there's Girls in the Forest, there's Girls on Rock, there's Girls in Icy Fjords. There's a lot of different themes, and then each program might focus on different science aspects, or we don't share all the same lessons exactly. And so the way that we teach and the specifics of that we teach might change a little bit, but there's like instructor inspired activities, and there's like these teachable moments, and the ways that we have, so some of our core curriculum is parallel across all of the programs. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a mix. We also like to support the interests and strengths of our expedition staff that we have, and we want to encourage them to bring out their expertise and what they're professional in as an example to these participants. So that individualism is important to bring into each expedition as well.
And are the instructors and the other people that are working on it, is it like a full female based team? Mm-hmm. Right, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
We've had some male guides step in, usually in like emergency scenarios when we're like, it's hard to find female guides. And even like our hiking, we have a whole crew of volunteers that we call gear fairies that are helping
gear fairies,
porter up equipment to like the backcountry hut that we stay at. And so there's a guide that takes them. And in the past, we've had like our assistant guide that we had on one expedition, her partner guided for us with the gear fairies, for example. And we have, so I've been talking a lot about the youth programs, but we also have adult programs that we run in the summer, 4-day condensed version. Those are not tuition free. We charge for those, but all the funds, all the profits go to funding the youth program. So for us, it's a fundraising program. Mm-hmm. And those we have a Women on Ice, and we have an Allies on Ice, which is for anybody. So the youth programs are more female based, but our adult programs are, one of them anyways is more general.
And how do you, that sounds like, now when you say that you're a go person, I'm starting to slowly piece all that together. How, considering the fact that you do have like a full-time job and just do other things recreationally yourself, like how is your time split between all these things?
Good question. I think, working a full-time job, also like training for this trip is a big piece. I'm going to Peru in June or July. We're still figuring out the full dates, but it's like a high mountain, first big international alpine expedition that I'm doing. And it's taking me now like 10 to 15 hours a week, depending if I do big days on the weekend, like up to 25 hours a week of like outdoor stuff, training stuff, plus the full-time job. You don't really have a ton of time left, and you need to sleep, ideally 8 hours. So there's not a lot of time, but I'm trying to wake up earlier because the early morning hours are usually more productive than like the lingering late night hours where you lose self-control on what you're doing.
So you just tapped into my brain there.
Yeah. So that's one tactic. Also, I think a lot of these things I've been doing for multiple years. So thinking on a larger time scale of like, I'm involved with this program, but I've been involved for years. And so there's definitely years where I've contributed more, and I've had roles where I've developed the curriculum or developed the training program for other instructors and like been through that process, put a lot of time into it. And now I'm more of like, it depends. I worked as a program manager last year on this Girls on Ice Canada. It's a nonprofit society, but for the organization too. And so, a lot of time went into it then, and now I'm reduced back to like more minimal volunteer hours. But yeah, I think balancing over the years of how much time I'm putting into each bucket but still like doing them all in the long term is one thing. The like hours within a day, I don't have a lot of downtime, like I mentioned. So I'm, that's, I think, a big piece. I try, although I'm guilty of this social media, getting sucked into social media at times, it's like something that I probably relatively limit more. I don't know. There's so much time that can be lost on your phone in a day. So I try to not do that. But then, I cook and eat at home, which takes a lot of time. Like eating is very time consuming. So
because you're cooking or because you're eating so much food that it's like
both of those things. But the cooking part mostly.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
And I was going to ask, like, you're someone who sounds like you're constantly. You obviously said you love learning. As we're adults now, I would say probably. But I mean, I don't know if I think of myself as that. But anyway, we're probably in the age bracket of which adulthood is happening. But you're someone who, by the sounds of it, is still constantly like learning new things and likes to learn new things. Do you think that curiosity is something that you have to actively protect as you become an adult? There's a quote I heard that's, what was it? It was, the quote goes, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few thoughts are coming to mind. I mean, I think the power of curiosity is huge in terms of, the approach to life with learning, whether it's skills, whether it's about people, being curious about somebody, being curious about cultures, coming from a point of curiosity in so many different realms of life, I think is very positive in many ways in terms of like environmental sustainability, in terms of human relationships, in terms of like how you view the world and everything that happens to you. Like if you approach circumstances that are not positive for you with curiosity, like what can you learn from it? And then how can you potentially avoid it next time or reduce the impacts next time? Yeah. I think that being curious can help in a lot of ways. And, I feel like the love of learning that I have has come from maybe the education that I've had. I learned a lot in this school that I went to when I was younger and was exposed to, arts and handcraft, like knitting and soapstone and woodwork and all these things. And then like going outside and all these outdoor things, as well as like history and science. And I think that had a huge impact on me in the long run in terms of continuing to want to learn a wide variety of things and try new things. But yeah, it has definitely been something that has steered my life on a day-to-day basis and in the long term of like, how much can I learn about stuff? And you need to, like we talked about before, do you want to learn a little bit in a lot of different things? How much of that do you do versus do you specialize in something? And there's obviously a delicate balance there. But I usually like try stuff and there's a lot that I leave behind. And I'm like, cool, that was really awesome to try. I don't need to do that again. I can focus on the thing that I want to put more time into because we only have, limited time, limited resources in a day and over the years. So it's good to be choosy once you've tried it, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely one of those people. I think you already said it before as well. Where like I don't like repeating stuff. Like I definitely thrive off of the newness of things. You know, I've got friends who like they've ran like countless marathons, and not to take away from that. It's just I've ran a marathon. I'm like, cool, I can do this. I don't have that. I also very much like that learning aspect of stuff, and I think it'd be, and again, this is my personal perspective, but I always think that it'd be quite boring if you just, you know, even at our age, if you just stopped, you're like, oh, cool, I know everything. Now, if that being said, I remember leaving school and having vividly remember being like, oh, thank God I don't need to learn anything. It was such a stupid...
Maybe not in that way or that context or that space, but...
I think like now, I honestly love the fact... I think like recently I've been, without getting too like emotional about it, I think I've been a little bit like, I felt a bit meh lately. And I think it's actually because I haven't been learning something like, in the last couple of years, I've done like some endurance stuff. So I like was learning the thing for running and then for swimming, and I always find like when I don't have something that I'm like learning, I just feel a bit like meh. Like, I don't know, a bit bored, to be honest, probably.
I mean, I think people have different ways of living and experiencing life and what they feel is satisfying or gratifying or makes them happy. So it's hard to compare that potentially across like all humans, but both learning and also for some, like having a goal. And usually, I think for me, a lot of my goals, there's learning involved, so they intertwine. But, you know, having some purpose and some meaning and some goals, whether or not they're short or long term, it can be very helpful.
Yeah, and even if you don't get the goal, you've learned along the way.
Totally.
Like I did that last year. I was trying to do the swim. The swim fell through. It was like a long distance swim, but the swim fell through. But which was disappointing, but in the training for that, I'd done like a bunch of stuff that I equally would have been amazed by had a few years ago.
Totally, yeah.
You know, so even the goal, like, well, you may not get it, it still has that benefit of learning.
Yeah,
teaching
totally.
you along the way.
Yeah.
Well, look, Isobel, thank you so much for sitting and chatting with me. I don't think you obviously weren't alluding to this, but I think when you were describing teaching those girls the fact that they, like, the different avenues, like people think of science, right? And I think of science prior to perhaps this conversation and maybe a little bit before that, of like physics, chemistry, biology, like very like in the lab, in the building.
That's what we learn in school.
Yeah. But you obviously were kind of giving the example of the fact that, you know, the courses that you're running for these girls is to show them that it doesn't have to be like that, and it can be really cool, and you can be outside and doing stuff like that. And what I was thinking when you were saying that was, I was like, it's kind of you. Like, I know you don't think that, or maybe you do, but you're humble enough not to admit it. I actually think it's really cool that there is someone like you who you are like the example of when these girls come on course, like all the stuff that you do in your life. Like, and anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is it's very cool that you do that, and then you're kind of like giving that on to these young girls that are coming on the course. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the goal as a science instructor on those expeditions. I've instructed for 5 of them over the years also. And the part of that, you know, who we select as instructors is very intentional as well. And the instructor team that we create, And part of that is, being a professional in your field and being a role model and a mentor for these participants. So, I think it's so cool. I don't connect with all the participants to the same degree personally given my field. Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot about the animals and the plants when we're on the expedition. And I like by default get super passionate about those things. And so, the people who are interested, I connect more with in that context, in that way. But it's really cool to see the impact that can have on some of them. It's a gift to pass it on and then, get the reward of hearing about what they pick for their university program, or what they like. I've written reference letters and helped them get into labs or jobs, and it's really cool to see the long-term impact that you can have. So
it's really cool, and I thank you for sharing that with me, because that is honestly really cool.